First thing, I'm going to be annoying and I'm going to ask everybody to come to the front. There is a method to the madness, so bear with me.
I can't see from the front row, so I think it's good to have it on this row.
Yeah, it's three close to the stage.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, very good. So, the title of this talk is something like touch and tactile perception. So it sounds very scientific, it sounds a little bit technical. And in a way it is, but I will start by relating it to something that I think most of you have heard, especially in piano lessons. You go to your piano lesson and your teacher says, you should change the color there. Right? And then you give it your best. You try to change the color. Right? How? Exactly how? I'll start with question. Now, don't think too much about it, but what are ways in which you can change the color, or how do we create color at the piano? Give me one idea. How do you change the color?
Pedaling.
Pedaling, very good. Anybody else? And when she says pedaling, of course you're talking not just about the right pedal, you're also talking about the accorda and the combinations of those two, the different combinations. So pedaling, it's all related to that. Any other way in which you can...
Like changing the weight of your hand or the firmness of your finger?
Yeah, well, that's going to be related to what I'm talking about. So let's call that touch.
Balance and voicing?
Balance. Balance in between the hands, and then also voicing. And then there is one other way in which sometimes we can create color, which is timing. So timing, voicing, balance, pedaling, touch. Roughly 5 ways. And of course, primarily, color exists in our mind. It starts in the mind. It starts as an imagination. So when you're not having your teacher tell you, hey, you have to change your color here, and giving you the reason why, it's a good idea to work on your imagination of what color you're trying to achieve. A lot of the times, we allow the fingers to make that decision for us. The ear kind of acts as a monitor after the fact. We play and we listen and we're like, oh, okay. But actually, primarily, that decision has to be made by the ear, and it has to be prior to whatever the finger or the hand or the arm is going to do. So we start with imagination. Imagination that can be nurtured by listening to all kinds of music, chamber music, orchestral music, and talking about instrumentation and talking about orchestration. That's a very good way sometimes of finding the color or imagining the color that you want in your music. If you had to orchestrate this, how would you orchestrate it? Would it be French horns? Would it be cello? They're in the same register, but they certainly have very different sounds. So once you have your imagination, and that has to be a conscious, you might have an instinct about it, but it has to be a conscious decision, then you have to figure out a way to create that color. And as we just said, one of the ways in which we can create that color is by approaching the key in different ways. And this is the part that is going to be mostly based on. In my experience as a teacher, many times the students go about this in a purely instinctual way. You want to change the color, you know that you are supposed to do something with your fingers or something with your hands, but exactly what? So super talented people somehow, like yourselves, find a way. But what I'm trying to bring is that instinct a little bit more into the realm of consciousness. So, we have this instrument which is capable of amazing things, quite impossible things. And part of being a pianist is actually believing in impossible things, such as legato. We all ask you to play legato, and you all know that it's somewhat not really possible. However, we still cultivate it, we still believe in it, we still work for it. That's basically what defines a pianist, believing in the impossible and struggling for it anyway, fully knowing that it is impossible. So now we have to create these colors. We're talking about how you can get inspiration from, oh, make it sound like a French horn, make it sound like a, okay, that's all great. But now, how do we do this? This instrument is the most indirect way of making music of all instruments. Think about it. If you're a singer, your instrument exists within you. If you're a flutist or an oboe player, it depends on your breath. You're infusing your breath into your music. If you're a violinist, you have the instrument tucked in one of the most intimate places. You're literally hugging the instrument. Or if you're a cellist, you're doing exactly the same thing. What do we do here? We sit at the piano, and the only part of our body that actually takes contact with the instrument is this part. We have no contact otherwise with the instrument. And then on top of that, if that wasn't enough, then you have to deal with a whole piece of machinery that actually is going to produce the sound. We are not plucking the strings ourselves like a harpist. No. It goes through a very complex machinery that is actually quite a feat of engineering. So it's about 100 pieces of mechanism between you and the actual sound. So in fact, we are more removed from the sound than any other musician. Now, this is precisely, remember what I said about believing in impossible things, precisely because we are more removed from the actual sound than any other musician, it is imperative that we connect to the instrument physically. Precisely because we have the most indirect instrument there is. So establishing an intimate physical relationship with the instrument is extremely important. That brings me to my next point, which is the point of perception. We start this instrument many times when we are very young, maybe 5, 6, maybe even earlier. For some people a little older, but it's pretty much when we're children. Many of you probably had an upright piano that you learned to play with, or you had the lack of having a grand piano already. But I bet that the keyboard was not half size. I bet that the keyboard was not 3/4. The keyboard was a professional keyboard. Except for some people that might learn in a keyboard. Most of us learn in a real piano, which has 88 keys. Now, how does that look and how is that perceived by a child? Well, that's our first encounter with the instrument when we first start. And most of you probably have this experience. First of all, it looks gigantic. The level, right? It's just gigantic. Then it looks confusing because there is these patterns of blacks and whites. And then it feels tough. It's difficult to put the key down. So this is the primary perception of the child. Why do I talk about this? Because this, unfortunately, it's going to be part of your perception of the keyboard even as you grow. So some of the problems or some of the mistakes that we make when we play the piano are based on a perception of the keyboard that is actually not real. Is the perception of a child that even though our bodies have changed and we have grown and we have become adults, the perception of the keyboard is still there. So for instance, I'll give you an example. My students complain, I don't have time to get to that bass, it's so far. So if you can grab the entire keyboard with your hands, how can anything be too far? I mean, far would be if the key was where Professor Brown is sitting. That's far. But if you can actually grab the entire keyboard just about this, how can any note be far? That perception of something being far and you not having time enough to get to that point is started at that point when you're a child. And it's going to have an effect. It's going to affect the way you move. We move based on how we perceive things. So if you think that something is far, you're going to compensate for that. That produces panic. Oh, that's far. I don't have enough time to get there. I'm going to miss it. So what do? You over-move at the very beginning of the movement. You get all tense. You get off the keys. Then you rush to the place. Most of the time you get there too early, and all of a sudden you have to stop yourself there because it's not time yet to play. Or worse, you hit it from somewhere above the sky, and either the sound is pretty bad or you end up missing the note altogether. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, that's because of your perception. You perceive anything as far. Again, that comes from the child. Then you see fortissimo in the score, and your first inclination is to what? Right? Why? Because as a child, your teacher tells you have to have dynamics, right? I mean, what is that? What is it? If you don't play with dynamics, then you have a problem. Your teacher gets upset. But as a child, it's difficult to put the key down. The key weighs. So the only way you can think of playing louder is to press. Unfortunately, as we grow old, that habit, that response stays with us. So how many of you have even had lessons with me this festival and I said, stop pressing into the bottom of the keyboard? It comes from that. Or black keys. Black keys are scary because they're narrower, they're higher, and they're far. Again, really far. Far from where? I mean, it's right here. And how high is it? To me, it's pretty much the same. However, you want to go to and I've seen this movement. Why are you doing that? It's right there. Again, those perceptions come from your time adapting to the instrument. I think that piano makers know somehow that it might not be profitable to have half-size pianos, three-quarter pianos. They do that with cellos, they do that with violins, but they do not do that with piano. And this is responsible for a lot of suffering. So your job right now is to bypass perceptions that you have formed when you were a child and realize that in the keyboard, nothing is far. Everything is close. Everything is right there. The black keys are not dangerous. By the way, 1725, Cristofori invents the gravicembalo called piano il forte. We are in 2021, almost 300 years. In 300 years, there are no records whatsoever of anybody breaking their fingers playing the piano. So if you have to play with your fingers here, and you think you're going to get caught by the black keys, and that you're going to get stuck, and your finger is going to get broken, it's never happened in 300 years. So most likely it's not going to happen to you. But how many times I see you trying to go into the black keys, maybe already your thumb is already on the black key, and then the other fingers trying to go like this because you don't want to get caught. And people tell me, but it's so difficult to play inside. Yeah, by the laws of leverage, it is easier here than it is here, but it's pretty easy. And again, another perception that you have from, don't put your finger there, it might get caught. Get rid of all this. Realize the perception, it's not reality. Now, that might seem not a very modern thing to say. Perception is not reality because everybody likes to think that their perception is their reality. If that were true, then if you were in a desert and you saw a mirage with a stand with Diet Coke, you would be safe. Unfortunately, that's your perception, you're seeing it. Unfortunately, that doesn't work. You're still going to die out of thirst. Or the famous parable of, is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? There are three kinds of people in the world. The ones that see it half full, the positive, optimistic, I admire them very much. The pessimistic ones, no, it's half empty. And then there's people like me that say, whether you see it one way or another, the amount of water remains the same. That's reality. Now you can perceive things one way. And in fact, many times we choose to perceive something one way. It's a choice. But it doesn't change the fact that the black keys are not 3 floors higher than the white keys. They are much closer than we think. Now how do we bypass these perceptions? By establishing a better connection to the keyboard. Treat the keyboard as if it was a sentient being, not a machine. So a lot of the times you react to the keyboard a little bit the same way you react to the keyboard of your laptops. There is a key there is a symbol there. Play it. Well, this is a much more sophisticated organism. Consider it a human being. Consider it, your favorite pet. Someone you like to touch. So, based on how you touch the keys, you're going to achieve whatever it is that you want musically. Many times, and I said it today, I think, somebody wanted to play a part of their piece and it was marked dolce. Well, if you want the piano to sound dolce, it might be a good idea to touch it in a sweet way. If it says teneramente, you might want to be quite tender in the touch. In other words, sometimes you have the tendency, we have the tendency to separate the sound, the character, from the actual physical gesture. It is precisely the sound, it is precisely the character that determines what physical gesture we should apply. So there is no way you can sound dolce if you don't touch the keys dolce. So it becomes very important then that we become acquainted with the keyboard at a physical level. So music is not something that happens somewhere in the universe and I hear about it and I read the code in the score. Music has to be produced. It has to be actually done physically. So you cannot wish upon a star that, oh, it will sound this way. I hope the piano sounds that way. Oh, no. You are in control. And you control the piano by controlling the keyboard. You cannot control the keyboard if you're not physically aware of the keyboard. And if you're not physically aware of your contact with the keyboard. So that is extremely important. We have the key. The key has 3 levels that you can, probably more, but 3 at least that you should become very, very aware of. The surface of the key. Now, how many of you have ever had the feeling of just sitting here and just touching the surface of the keys? And just enjoy the smoothness and really put your brain in your fingers and really feel the texture. Many times when we play the key, we bypass the surface. We don't feel the surface. Curiously enough, that affects the way we attack the key. For instance, I'll give you an example. Light staccatos. And some teacher probably tells you, yeah, use your wrist. And I would say, absolutely. However, if you do not feel the surface of the key before you play that note, that note may not speak at all. This might happen. I'm using my wrist. No sound. So unless I connect with the finger and I feel the surface of the keyboard, then it might not speak even. Also, in preparation of a certain tone. Producing a tone at the piano sometimes is like, well, you're all too young, but it's like tasting a wine. I'll use food. So you have a meal and it's your favorite meal, and even before you taste it, you smell it, and you kind of already know how the taste is, how good it's going to be. Well, the fingers act the same way. Before you play a note, the finger already is feeling, tasting the sound, almost anticipating. It has like a prophetic quality. However, if your finger is unprepared, numb, not ready to accept the key, to take the key, it is going to be almost impossible that you get the right sound. So that connection between your imagination, what you hear inside, the finger almost tasting the sound, and then finally the production of the tone, that is absolutely essential. Otherwise, you're just gambling. It may or may not happen. And then you're just using your ear after the fact. You have to make sure that your fingers are participants. They have the highest technological sensors ever created. You have to be hypersensitive to the keyboard. You control the keyboard, you control the sound. You control the sound, you control what you want to do musically. So it is extremely important. We have the surface. Then we have the sound point. That bump that you feel halfway through the key. Now, most of you do not use this level, or don't use it nearly as much. So a lot of the times, you're playing too many notes in the bottom of the key. And this explains how sometimes our layering is not that great. So I'll give you examples. Schumann has that a lot. Schumann has this texture that he loves, where he has the upper line somewhere with 4 and 5 of the right hand. Then there is something going on with his fingers. Then there is maybe something going on, some other figuration here, and then you have the bass. And you're supposed to balance all that. Well, if you don't make use of the middle of the key, give you another example. This could sound like this. That's when you play everything in the same level. So if you want to improve your sense of layering, distribution of arm weight, and how you feel different levels in the key will help you tremendously. And then finally, you have the bottom of the key. At the bottom of the key, actually, nothing really happens. The sound has been produced already. So what happens is that at the bottom of the key, the hammer has already retreated to an intermediate position. So it's not really that the sound is produced there. It is that in our way to the bottom of the key, we produce the tone in one way or another. But how do you perceive the bottom of the key? A lot of the times we perceive the bottom of the key as something passive, a piece of wood that is just resisting. So we just get dead down there. I always ask my students to imagine the bottom of the keyboard being as a gelatinous substance. It's not good. It's something that when you play it, it has a certain buoyancy. Being passive or being dead at the bottom of the key not only produces a kind of like a dead sound that doesn't go anywhere, but it makes it extremely difficult to continue moving towards the next tone, towards the next idea. So many times I see people playing a long note and just going like, and it is truly a dead note. Because long notes are supposed to spin. They're supposed to go somewhere, either gather momentum or decelerate, but they're not supposed to be flat, passive. So even though it is what it is, physically you can tell me, yeah, you can feel it that way, but it is really a piece of wood, and you just go down and that's it. Yes, absolutely, but you also have to deal with your own body. Your own body is formed by different joints, and our joints are actually designed for moving and for moving in circular motions. So when you play the piano, you try to move in straight motions. You're actually doing something that might make sense here, but not for your body. Your body, the joints are designed for circular movements. So you can have a very flat curve that looks like a straight line, but it's still a curve. It's not really straight. Again, perception versus reality. So now we have the 3 levels of the key, which most of you might have already heard about, but how do we cultivate being connected to them? So, you do it by doing shallow scales. Now, how many of you have heard about this ever? Shallow scales. Okay, so we're going to have some fun. So, would you come up? There are 3 types that I use of shallow scales. And so we're going to demonstrate what a shallow scale is. So this is very simple. I'm going to ask you to do a scale. Doesn't matter which scale it is. Your favorite scale. But these are the conditions. You're going to have full arm weight. You're going to be completely relaxed. You're going to have very firm fingers. And you're going to go all the way to the bottom of the key in one deliberate stroke. You cannot stop in the middle. You cannot be hesitant. Once you start putting the key down, it goes down. But I don't want to hear any sound. hands. All the way to the bottom of the key, no stops. No sound. Continue. Good. Now relax the shoulders. Now can you go faster? No sound though. Faster. Relax. Relax the arms. Do you notice your fingers very firm? Yeah. All the way to the bottom. It's not so easy, huh? Can you close your eyes? Close your eyes. Now connect to your fingers. Feel the kick coming down. And try to go as fast as possible, but yet no sound. Firm fingers, especially that joint near the nail. Very firm. Not stiff, firm. Don't be hesitant. Once you start putting the key down, you have to control the speed. You want to go very slow, and yet the tempo of the scale fast. Okay, so what did you learn? How did it feel?
Definitely challenging.
Challenging.
Yeah.
And can you imagine any benefit to this? What do you think could be the benefit?
I think it increases awareness of the connection between your sort of intentions and the sound you produce.
Right, and have you ever been very tense trying to play something very soft?
Yes.
But you just demonstrated that you can make it not sound at all. So playing softer would be easier, right? So it's not so hard.
Yeah, it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. So now, instead of freaking out at the surface of the key because you have to play something very soft, you actually know what to do to control it. You can actually make it not sound at all. So can you play a chord, not make it sound, and then just simply play the same chord again, and just let it sound. First one chord, no sound. 3 fingers coming down together with the palm. Okay? Now simply do it again and just allow it to sound. Don't do much. No, but that's mezzo forte. How about pianissimo? Oh, it's pretty good. Was it difficult?
Not really, actually, just supposed to be less difficult.
Yeah, because you were thinking, I have to control the speed, my fingers firm, I'm relaxed, and all of a sudden you could control the piano, right? So that is the benefit of this. Also, if you become advanced, what's going to happen is that you're going to be able to do the scale faster. Of course, there is a threshold, and of course, I will have to practice myself. But there is a threshold where see what I'm doing? I'm going as fast as I can, but still no sound. And if I go a little bit faster, I cannot control it anymore, and there will be some sound, right? Eventually, you're gonna get to that threshold. Well, your job every day is to keep pushing that threshold, because that's going to increase your control of the key. Okay? Good. You can go back. So now, second. Yeah, you see the perfect. Second level, sound point. So it's exactly the same idea, but in the sound point. So, you. Come on. Yeah, you. So, now we're going to do exactly the same thing, but this time we're not going to go to the bottom of the key. We're just going, may I touch your, we're going to go here, but no past that. You feel that? not there, there. But you have to go to that point in every single key. And make sure that you arrive to that point, but you do not go through, and that there is no sound. So try and close your eyes and connect. This is also very good for your ear because it forces you to know when you're making some sound or not. Oh. Not so easy, right? Don't hold your arms up, relax your arms, and keep your fingers very firm, very aware of the keys. And do more than one scale, one octave, please. Yes, continue, faster. Okay, very good. So now, can you do that, making the piano sound pianissimo, but don't go any further than that. Faster. Interesting fingering. Good. You're in the Couperin school of scale patterns. Good. So what did you learn from this? Is that something that you feel a lot when you practice?
I usually go to the very bottom instead of kind of on more.
So see, when you go to the very bottom, then that's what happened when I was playing. I was being ridiculous with the Schubert impromptu. If you play everything in the same level, then it stands to reason that a lot of things are going to sound the same. So we want variety. So now you know that you can play certain things in the bottom, you can play certain things in the middle, and you can even play certain things in the surface. And for that, we're going to get another person. Thanks. So. Maybe one of the gentlemen. What about you? Me? Yeah, you. Okay, so now you know what's coming, right? It's the last level. Okay. And you thought that the bottom of the key and the middle of the key were hard. Actually, this is a lot of fun too, because now we're going to perceive the surface of the key. So the purpose of the exercise is to have a very clear perception of the surface of the key, a very vivid, very crispy. So I'm going to ask you to articulate your fingers for the scale. And I want you to feel, when the finger comes down, I want you to feel every surface of the key. So I should be hearing no piano, but I should be hearing this in the surface of every key. And yet, no sound. Right. No, that's not the surface. That's not the surface. Yes. But you're going below the surface. You cannot. Yeah. There you go. Do you feel now it's very, very sharp, right? Now keep going. Why do you always just do one octave? You're so stingy. Like at least 4 octaves. Again. No sound. So the idea is that you feel the contact very clear. Make it very active. Make your articulation active. Because this is for perception, this is for awareness, you know? Good. So what do you think you can learn from this? I love your reaction. You went like, wow. What was wow about it?
I was very surprised at what can be done very top of the piano. It was surprising for me.
Can you think of any possible application of this in your piano playing?
I mean, off the top of my head, it seems very useful for impressionistic playing.
Very good observation. What about those Chopin, leggero, filigrane kind of, where you want what the French call the jeu perlé, that you had sometimes you hear in the golden age of piano playing, people like Rubinstein and people like
Very special sound.
very special sound. So if you can give me a very fast scale with the right hand, but very quiet, and apply that technique, instead of just tapping in the surface of the keys and not make it sound, just go a little bit beyond that with a little bit more energy, tap with a little bit more energy, and just allow the piano to sound. Yes. See that? But every finger, not just some fingers, every finger has to do the job. Don't go much beyond the surface. Trust the quickness and the precision of the attack. Yeah, without the elbow going like that, but that's the right. Did you notice? Were you more aware of the surface of the keys?
Oh, much more. And also that you really need to have a very precise attack, like you said, to make it sound.
Correct. So these are the three levels. Thank you. These are the three levels of the key. And some of the applications that you can find even in your music. Now, how do you enhance this even more? And I did it with the first student. I said, close your eyes. Now, how many of you practice with your eyes closed? Yeah. How long? I'm not saying, okay, you're feeling the music, and then you close your eyes, and you're raptured by the music, and you close your eyes, and then you open it like 5 seconds later. No. That's not what I mean. What I mean is, do you spend, let's ask a terrible question. How long do you practice? On average, terrible question.
4 hours.
Very nice. So, 4 hours. An hour and a half of that time you should practice with your eyes closed. The entire hour. Not just here and there. Now I say that to all my students, of course none of them do it. But the reason why they don't do it is not because they disagree with the principle. They agree with the principle, they're just too afraid. So, we're going to do something fun. Let's see. Someone close. How about you? So what pieces are you working on right now? Rachmaninoff? Rachmaninoff what? Okay, you're all set. All right. Well, we can work with that. So, I have this here. And you're going to put this on your eyes. You're going to blindfold yourself. Go ahead, you get it. Can you see anything? Good. Okay, so I want you to play your first moment musical Rachmaninoff, but no, without taking that away, blindfolded.
Oh, wait.
I just don't want to pull your hair. Okay?
Oh, can I do number 5 instead?
With what?
No.
Number 5. You think that's okay? Well, I won't be cruel. Okay, let's try this. So it's hard to find the first note. But notice that middle C has not moved from the piano. Ever since you started playing the piano, middle C is always in the same place. Okay, let's try. So, how did you feel? What did you think when you were doing this?
I'm trying to not let anything break the feeling of my hands, because if I break something.
What you mean is the continuity of your movements,
Yeah.
right? Interesting. And what about when you missed notes? What happened when you missed notes? What did you think?
You mean after?
Not after, in the moment you realized, okay, that was not the right note. What was your reaction?
I
Did you think-
somehow know that I'm going to miss it.
You knew you were gonna miss it. That's not very hopeful. You should have been a little bit more optimistic. Now, my point is that the reason why a lot of the times we don't do this is because when we close our eyes, we're so dependent on our eyesight that in the moment we close the eyes and we make the first mistake, we start freaking out. And we immediately give up. We immediately go, right? Well, this is also a mental exercise. When you start playing with your eyes closed and you start making mistakes, which are absolutely normal, the point is not to panic. The point is to focus your mind, relax, stretch out with your feelings, and especially with your fingers. Use the information that one finger is giving you about location and about sound to regain control of where you are. That is what I find extremely important. Another benefit of doing this is what it does to your sense of hearing. Once your eyesight is no longer helping you, you're not distracted by the stimuli, by what's happening around you, by the color of the keys, by your hands moving. So then finally, your brain can concentrate on what's really important, which is the sound. What kind of sound? You finally start really listening. So you quiet the noise in your mind, you close your eyes, you go to that very, very quiet place inside you. And then no matter what happens, you make a mistake, you know, okay, my other finger was here, I can calculate, I can find my place, and then you just continue. It's like in meditation, you know, when they ask you to just don't think about anything, or concentrate on your breathing. And of course, when they tell you that, you immediately start thinking about a million things. It's okay. It's okay. The worst thing that you can say to yourself is, I'm gonna give up, this is too difficult. The worst thing you can say is, oh, I'm failing at this. No, you just simply, gently remind yourself to go back to your focus. So you put away all the noise and you concentrate on the purity of the tone that you're producing right now. And that's very important, because a lot of our mistakes and a lot of our problems come from sending our sense of hearing into the future and starting to worry about what's going to happen into the future. Your mind might tell you what comes into the future. Your mind is like a flashlight. It's saying, okay, this is coming. But your ear has to be in the note that you're playing right now. And the other thing is, of course, as you can imagine, by having your eyes not being helpful, being blindfolded or in the darkness, you also enhance your sense of touch. And that's why we're doing this. Besides all those other benefits, do you feel your fingers anymore when you couldn't look at them? Yes. And if you feel your fingers better, and if you feel the keys better, that means that you can control your sound better.
Yeah, I feel an urge to like play it differently somehow with my fingers. 'Cause I can feel more.
You know what happened? You couldn't see your fingers, so then the fingers became nothing but a tool, which is what they should be. So then instead of them deciding the tone and then deciding what you were trying to do, your ear started deciding. Yes, that's correct. So that's exactly what you need to be doing when you practice. I don't know if I have, yeah, I have to kind of close it. Any questions? Any comments? No, not even one thing? Okay.
How have you applied this most to your own playing?
Well, do you think I just talk about these things and then everything I do when I play, whether it's good or bad, is based on this. The reason I teach this is because this is what I found was beneficial to me in my own playing. I don't teach anything I don't believe in.
No, of course.
Right? So basically, I also practice with my eyes closed when I practice. I also try to connect, and this is not something that you do it for a couple of months because you heard it in a festival and then, no. This is something that every single day when I practice, part of the way I practice is to reacquaint myself physically with the instrument. I work on that connection every day. I work on my technique every day. You never get to a point where you say, okay, done. No, you keep cultivating it through your entire life. Yes?
So, I noticed there's some great stillness with that sort of exercise where you really listen. I wonder how you can maintain that stillness even when you play fortissimo things. Like, sometimes, as you were saying, we start to press when we play fortissimo, and how
Well, that's a very complex, because I don't think it's difficult to separate the stillness from rigidity. You do not want to be static or rigid when actually, in my view, perfect technique would be one in which we're constantly moving. But I have certain rules for movement at the piano. It must be constant, it must be as minimal as possible, as slow as possible, and in circular motions. So think of it as kind of like, in a perfect technique, from my point of view, each movement would be generating the next movement, in an interrupted change of movements that are natural, and one produces the other one feeds off the other one, and it's connected, and it's always most economical, without jerking around, and in kind of like circular motions.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Yes, please.
The four. Can you repeat the four rules?
4 rules of piano movement.
Yes.
Those are mine, eh?
Yes.
Don't start putting on Facebook.
Awesome.
Yeah. So move constantly. Move, but don't over move. Don't flap. No, just move constantly. Realize this is rigid. You're not. You're a human being, so you move at the keyboard. Move constantly. Move as little as possible. So if you can do it with this movement, don't do this one. Be economical. Move as slow as possible. And I say as possible because sometimes you have to move fast. There is no other way. But you try not to move too fast. You only move just fast enough to get the job done. And then move in circular motions, because that's the way our joints are created. So even if the curve has to be almost flat, it's still a curve. And that was it.